You're listening to Glowfully by Aléora, and welcome back. So, if you're joining me again, I really hope you had a lovely start to the new year. And if this is your first time listening, then welcome. I'm so glad you found your way here. This episode marks the beginning of season 2. And before we get into today's topic, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that over the past season, Glowfully has grown into a space where women can come to understand their bodies more clearly, ask better questions about their health, and feel more informed and supported in the process. And that is something I am incredibly proud of and I take very seriously. And I want to say thank you so much to all of you who have been here for it. Now it's time for season 2 to build on that in a bigger and deeper way. This year, we're going to be covering so much more on a broader spectrum of women's health. We'll be talking about specific conditions and life stages, hormones, metabolism, skin, cycles, energy, and long-term ways of supporting the body holistically. Everything we share will continue to be grounded in women's health education, physiology, and evidence-aware holistic care. And remember, nothing here is about rules, restriction, or fixing yourself. It's about understanding your body and responding to it with support. If you'd like to follow along more closely this year, you can find Aléora across our socials, subscribe to the blog and mailing list, and join the Aléora Babes on Substack and our website, where we share deeper education, extended discussions, and ongoing support. All of these links are in the show notes, or you can find them all at bio.byaleora.com. I'm also very excited to announce that there will be new product launches, and that is something I am so excited for, so stay tuned for that. Now, for our very first episode of season 2, we're starting with a topic that so many women have questions about and yet so few clear answers. PCOS, irregular cycles, and what your hormones may be trying to communicate. This episode is not about diagnosing yourself or finding a quick solution. It's about understanding what's happening in your body so you can move forward with clarity rather than confusion. Let's get into it. Part 1. What PCOS actually is and what it is not. PCOS, which stands for polycystic ovary syndrome, is one of the most common hormonal conditions affecting women of reproductive age. And yet, despite how common it is, many women spend years being dismissed, misinformed, or left without clear explanations. Some women are told they might have PCOS without being told why. Others are diagnosed and handed a leaflet, a prescription, or told to come back when they want to conceive. Many are left feeling like their body is doing something wrong. So let's start by clearing some things up. PCOS is not simply a condition of the ovaries. Despite the name, it is better understood as a hormonal and metabolic condition. It affects how the ovaries function, how hormones are produced and regulated, and how the body responds to insulin and energy availability. One of the biggest myths about PCOS is that it is defined by ovarian cysts. But in reality, many women with PCOS never have cysts visible on ultrasound, and many women without PCOS do. So the presence or absence of cysts alone does not define the condition. At a hormonal level, PCOS often includes higher levels of androgens. These are sometimes referred to as male hormones, but the language can be misleading. Women naturally produce androgens too. They play important roles in energy, libido, and muscle maintenance. In PCOS, however, androgen levels or sensitivity can become elevated, which can interfere with ovulation. When ovulation is disrupted, the entire rhythm of the menstrual cycle is affected. This is why irregular or absent periods are such a common feature of PCOS. Another key piece of PCOS is insulin. Insulin is a hormone that helps move glucose from the bloodstream into the cells so that it can be used for energy. In many women with PCOS, the body becomes less responsive to insulin. This is known as insulin resistance. When the body is insulin resistant, the pancreas produces more insulin to compensate. Higher insulin levels can then stimulate the ovaries to produce more androgens, which further disrupts ovulation. This creates a feedback loop between metabolism and reproductive hormones. It is also important to understand that PCOS exists on a spectrum. Some women experience irregular periods as their main symptom, while others notice acne, hair growth, hair thinning, weight changes, or fertility challenges. Some women are lean and others are not. PCOS is not caused by weight, and it is not any kind of failure. For many women, PCOS is less about something being wrong and more about the body adapting to internal and external pressures. Think genetics, metabolic load, inflammation, stress, and lifestyle factors. Now, moving on to part two, I want to talk about irregular periods as a symptom, not the problem. One of the most common reasons women start questioning their hormonal health or are investigated for PCOS is because their periods don't follow the pattern they were taught to expect. Cycles might be long, unpredictable, or inconsistent. Periods might be missed entirely for months at a time. Some women experience very light bleeding that feels confusing, while others bleed irregularly with no clear rhythm. And for many women, this creates a constant background anxiety of not knowing what their body is doing or whether something is wrong. It is completely understandable that irregular periods are often treated as the problem. We're taught that a regular cycle is the marker of health, and when that disappears, it can feel unsettling or even alarming. But physiologically, irregular periods are very rarely the root issue. They are almost always a signal. To understand this properly, we need to talk about what actually creates a menstrual cycle in the first place. A menstrual cycle is not simply the body deciding to bleed once a month. A true cycle is built around ovulation, and ovulation is the central event that coordinates the entire hormonal rhythm of the cycle. When ovulation happens, it sets off a very specific sequence of hormonal changes involving estrogen, progesterone, luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone. This hormonal cascade is what leads to a predictable period around 2 weeks later. So, when cycles are irregular, absent, or unpredictable, it usually tells us that ovulation is not happening regularly. That is a crucial distinction because it shifts the question away from why am I not getting a period and towards why is ovulation not being consistently supported. In PCOS, ovulation may be delayed, inconsistent, or completely suppressed. This often happens because the hormonal environment needed to support ovulation is not fully in place. Elevated androgens can interfere with follicle development. Elevated insulin can disrupt ovarian signaling. Inflammation and metabolic strain can further reduce the body's readiness to ovulate. This does not mean the body is broken. In fact, it often means the body is responding intelligently to what it perceives internally. Ovulation is an energetically demanding process. It requires significant energy availability, stable blood sugar, balanced hormones, and a nervous system that does not perceive ongoing threat or stress. If the body senses that conditions are not supportive, ovulation is one of the first processes to be downregulated. From a biological perspective, this is protective. Irregular cycles can also be influenced by chronic stress and nervous system load. When the body is under ongoing stress, whether emotional, physical, psychological, or environmental, cortisol levels can remain elevated, and cortisol directly interacts with reproductive hormones and can suppress ovulatory signaling. Inflammation also plays a large role. Low grade inflammation, which is common in PCOS, can interfere with hormone receptors and ovarian communication. Nutrient status matters too. So, deficiencies in key nutrients involved in hormone production and detoxification can affect cycle regularity over time. So, when cycles become irregular, the body is often communicating that something internally needs more support. This is why approaches that focus solely on forcing a regular bleed often fall short. A bleed does not necessarily indicate ovulation. It does not mean hormonal balance has been restored. It simply means the uterine lining has been shed. So, when it comes to supporting long term cycle regularity, it usually involves supporting the system that makes ovulation possible rather than forcing on the bleed itself. That includes metabolic support, stress regulation, inflammation reduction, nervous system safety, and adequate nourishment. When those foundations begin to stabilize, ovulation often becomes more consistent and cycles naturally start to regulate over time. For many women, this reframing alone can be deeply relieving. So instead of viewing irregular cycles as a failure or something that needs to be fixed immediately, they can be seen as feedback. The cycle becomes a messenger rather than a measure of worth or success. Your cycle is not punishing you, it is reflecting what your body is experiencing internally. And when you learn to listen to that information with curiosity rather than judgment, you create the conditions for real, sustainable hormone support. Moving on to part three, the insulin and hormone connection. Now, this is one of the most important pieces of PCOS that is still not explained clearly enough to women, and that is the role of insulin. This is where a lot of confusion, frustration, and misplaced blame tends to show up. Insulin is often talked about as a weight hormone or something that only matters if you have diabetes. But in reality, insulin is a foundational hormone that affects energy, hormones, ovulation, appetite, and how safe the body feels metabolically. Insulin's primary job is to move glucose, which come from carbohydrates, out of the bloodstream and into the cells so it can be used for energy. Every time you eat, insulin is released. This is normal. This is necessary. Without insulin, the body cannot function. So the issue is not insulin itself. The issue is how the body responds to insulin over time. In many women with PCOS, the body becomes less sensitive to insulin. This is known as insulin resistance. When cells do not respond efficiently to insulin, the pancreas produces more of it to achieve the same effect. Over time, insulin levels can remain chronically elevated. This matters deeply for women's hormones. Insulin does not just manage blood sugar, it directly interacts with the ovaries. Elevated insulin levels can stimulate the ovaries to produce more androgens. As we talked about earlier, higher androgen levels can interfere with ovulation and disrupt the hormonal rhythm of the cycle. This is one of the reasons PCOS is now understood as a metabolic reproductive condition, not just a reproductive one. What's important to understand here is that insulin resistance can be present even if blood sugar levels appear normal on a standard test. It can also be present in women who are lean, active, and eating what would traditionally be considered a healthy diet. This is why so many women are told your bloods look fine, while still experiencing very real symptoms. Insulin resistance also helps explain many of the day to day experiences that women with PCOS describe. For example, feeling exhausted after meals, experiencing intense cravings, especially for quick energy foods, feeling shaky, irritable, or foggy if meals are delayed, having energy dips in the afternoon, and feeling like hunger comes on suddenly and urgently. These experiences are often framed as issues of willpower or self control, but in reality, they are psychological responses to blood sugar instability. When blood sugar rises quickly and then drops quickly, the body responds by releasing stress hormones to stabilize it. This can create a cycle of cravings, fatigue, and emotions that feel confusing and overwhelming. Insulin resistance can also influence how the body stores energy. For some women, elevated insulin levels make it easier to store fat and harder to access stored energy. This can affect weight patterns and body composition in ways that feel deeply unfair, especially when women are doing everything they believe they should be doing. This is not a moral issue, and this is not a discipline issue. It is metabolic physiology. Supporting insulin sensitivity is not about restricting or punishment. In fact, aggressive restriction often makes insulin resistance worse. by increasing stress hormones and destabilizing blood sugar further. Supporting insulin sensitivity is about creating stability. That stability comes from consistent nourishment, not skipping meals. From pairing carbohydrates with protein and fat so blood sugar rises more gently. From regular eating rhythms that signal safety to the body. From adequate sleep because sleep deprivation directly worsens insulin sensitivity. From movement that supports metabolic health without pushing the body into exhaustion. And from stress regulation because chronic stress rises cortisol, which further disrupts insulin signaling. Now, the nervous system plays a role here too. When the body is in a constant state of alert, it prioritizes quick energy availability over long term hormonal balance. Insulin resistance can be part of that adaptive response. So, understanding this connection can be incredibly validating for women. It reframes cravings as communication, and it reframes energy crashes as information. It also reframes weight struggles as physiology rather than failure. And most importantly, it shifts the focus away from what am I doing wrong towards what does my body need more support with right now. When insulin sensitivity improves, many women notice improvements not just in energy and cravings, but in ovulation, cycle regularity, skin, and overall hormonal balance. Now, this is not instant, it is gradual, but it is possible. Hormones do not work in isolation. Metabolic health and reproductive health are deeply intertwined, so supporting one often supports the other. Now let's move on to part 4, androgens, acne, and hair changes. For many women with PCOS, the symptoms that feel the most distressing are not the ones that show up on blood tests or ultrasounds. They are the ones you can see in the mirror. Acne that appears suddenly or persists well into adulthood. Hair growing in places it never did before. Hair thinning or hair loss on the scalp. These changes can feel confronting, embarrassing, and deeply personal, especially when they seem to happen without any explanation. And unfortunately, these are also the symptoms women are most often dismissed about. So let's slow this down and talk clearly about what is actually happening. At the center of these changes are androgens. Androgens are hormones that all women produce. They are not inherently bad. In healthy balance, androgens support energy, libido, bone strength, and muscle maintenance. The problem in PCOS is not that androgens exist, but that levels may be higher than usual or tissues may be more sensitive to them. In PCOS, elevated androgen levels or increased androgen sensitivity can interfere with ovulation, which we've already discussed. But androgens also have very real effects on tissues throughout the body, particularly the skin and hair follicles. So let's start with the skin. Androgens stimulate the sebaceous glands, which are the glands that produce oil, also known as sebum. When androgen signaling is higher, oil production increases, meaning more oil alone is not the problem, but when oil combines with dead skin cells and inflammation, pores can become clogged. This creates an environment where acne is more likely to develop. PCOS related acne often appears around the jawline, chin, neck, or lower face. This pattern is sometimes referred to as hormonal acne, but that term is often used without explanation. What it actually reflects is how androgen sensitive the oil glands in those areas are. Now, it is important to say this clearly. This type of acne is not caused by poor hygiene, dirty skin, or having the right skincare routine. You can have the most consistent skincare habits in the world and still experience acne if the underlying hormonal signals are driving oil production and inflammation. Now, let's talk about hair. Hair follicles in different parts of the body respond differently to androgens. This is where things can feel especially confusing. In some areas of the body, such as the face, chest, abdomen, or inner thighs, androgens can stimulate hair follicles to become more active. This can lead to thicker, darker, or more noticeable hair growth. This is often referred to as androgen sensitive hair growth. But at the same time, hair follicles on the scalp, particularly around the crown and temples, can respond to androgens in the opposite way. In these areas, androgens can cause follicles to gradually miniaturize. Over time, this leads to thinning hair, widening partings, or increased hair shedding. So, women with PCOS can experience more hair in places they don't want it and less hair where they do. This is not contradictory, it is a reflection of how different follicles respond to the same hormonal signals. These changes can be incredibly distressing. Hair and skin are closely tied to identity, femininity, and self confidence. So many women feel ashamed or isolated, especially if they don't see these symptoms openly discussed or understood. It's also common for women to be told that these symptoms are cosmetic and not medically important, and that dismissal can be deeply invalidating. These symptoms matter, not because they are dangerous, but because they affect how women feel in their bodies and in the world. It is essential to understand that these changes are hormonal expressions, not personal failures. They are not the result of not trying hard enough, not eating correctly, or not caring for yourself properly. Supporting androgen balance in PCOS usually involves working upstream. Because androgens are closely linked to insulin, addressing insulin resistance often plays a key role in reducing androgen production over time. Lowering systemic inflammation can also help reduce how strongly tissue responds to androgens. Supporting liver function is important too, as the liver helps metabolize and clear hormones from the body. This process takes time. Hair follicles operate on long growth cycles. Skin turnover also happens gradually. Changes rarely happen overnight, which can be frustrating. But many women do see improvements when the underlying hormonal environment becomes more supportive. It's also important to approach these symptoms with compassion. Trying to aggressively control or fight the body often increases stress, which can worsen hormonal signaling. A more supportive approach focuses on creating internal balance and safety rather than external perfection. Your skin and hair are not betraying you. They are responding to the hormonal signals they are receiving. And when those signals begin to change, they often respond too. Now, let's move on to part 5, nutrition for hormonal balance without diet culture. Nutrition is one of those areas where women with PCOS often feel the most confused, pressured, or overwhelmed. Many women are given long lists of food to avoid, strict plans to follow, or conflicting advice that leaves them feeling like they are constantly getting it wrong. Over time, this can create fear around food and a sense of disconnection from the body. A more supportive approach to nutrition, especially in PCOS, is not about control or perfection. It is about nourishment, stability, and consistency. Rather than focusing on individual foods as good or bad, it can be more helpful to think in terms of what helps the body feel supported hormonally and metabolically. One of the most important nutritional foundations for PCOS is blood sugar stability. When blood sugar rises and falls sharply, insulin levels follow. As we've discussed, insulin plays a central role in ovarian hormonal signaling. So the goal is not to eliminate carbohydrates, but to help the body process them more steadily. Many women find it supportive to pair carbohydrates with protein and fat. For example, having fruit alongside yogurt or nuts, having toast with eggs or avocado, or having rice or potatoes with a source of protein and vegetables. This combination helps slow digestion and reduce rapid blood sugar spikes. Eating regularly also matters. Long gaps between meals can lead to blood sugar drops, which trigger cravings, fatigue, and stress hormone release. Regular meals can help signal safety and consistency to the body. Fiber is another important piece. Fiber helps slow the absorption of glucose and supports gut health, which in turn influences hormone metabolism. Fiber-rich foods include vegetables, beans, lentils, whole grains, seeds, and berries. You don't need to eat all of these at once. Small, regular inclusion is what matters. Protein plays a key role in hormone production and blood sugar regulation. Sources might include eggs, fish, poultry, tofu, yogurt, or nuts and seeds. Again, this is not about hitting targets, it is about including a source of protein most times you eat. Healthy fats are also essential for hormone health. Hormones are made from fats, and fats help keep blood sugar steady. So, sources include olive oil, avocados, nuts, seeds, oily fish, and full fat dairy if tolerated. Beyond macronutrients, certain micronutrients are particularly important in PCOS. Magnesium supports insulin sensitivity, nervous system regulation, and muscle relaxation. It is found in foods like leafy greens, nuts, seeds, whole grains, and dark chocolate. Zinc plays a role in hormone production, skin health, and immune function too. It is found in foods such as pumpkin seeds, meat, shellfish, and eggs. B vitamins support energy metabolism and hormone detoxification. They are found in whole grains, eggs, leafy greens, and animal products. Omega 3 fatty acids have anti inflammatory effects and support hormone signaling. They are found in oily fish like salmon and sardines, as well as flax seeds, chia seeds, and walnuts. And if you're like me and don't really eat seafood, then I take an omega 3 supplement, which I take every day, and I found it very helpful. Iron status also matters, particularly for women who experience irregular or heavy bleeding. Iron rich foods include red meat, lentils, beans, spinach, and fortified grains, with vitamin C rich foods helping absorption. It's also worth acknowledging that digestion and gut health play a role in hormonal balance. The gut helps process and eliminate hormones, so if digestion is sluggish or inflamed, hormone clearance can be affected. Supporting the gut with fiber, hydration, and a variety of plant foods can be beneficial over time. But perhaps one of the most important aspects of nutrition in PCOS is reducing stress around food. Stress hormones like cortisol directly interact with insulin and reproductive hormones. So, if eating becomes a source of anxiety, guilt, or pressure, that stress can undermine the very balance women are trying to support. Nutrition should feel grounding, not punishing. Flexible, consistent nourishment often supports hormonal health more effectively than rigid rules. There is no single PCOS diet. What matters most is finding an approach that feels sustainable, nourishing, and supportive for your body. Now, part 6, herbal and holistic support for PCOS. This section is really important because when women are navigating PCOS, they are often told about medications or weight loss, but not taught how to support their bodies in a way that feels steady, holistic, and sustainable. And I want to be clear from the beginning, herbs and supplements are not magic fixes, and they are not a substitute for medical care when it is needed, but they can be genuinely supportive tools, especially when they are used thoughtfully, consistently, and as part of a bigger foundation. The way I like to frame this is PCOS is often a combination of hormonal signaling, metabolic strain, inflammatory load, and nervous system stress. So the support we choose tends to work best when it targets those foundations. I'm going to walk you through herbal and holistic support in a few key categories, not as strict rules, but as options you can explore and build into your life in a way that feels realistic. Number 1, support for androgens and hormonal signaling. One of the most talked about herbal supports in PCOS is spearmint. Spearmint tea has been studied for its potential to support androgen balance in women with PCOS. In simple terms, it may help reduce symptoms driven by androgens, such as acne or unwanted hair growth for some women. It is not instant and it is not a guarantee, but it is a gentle option that many women tolerate well. A practical way to try this, if it feels appropriate for you, is to drink spearmint tea regularly, often daily, for a number of weeks and then reassess. Consistency matters more than intensity. If you try it once and nothing changes, that does not mean it does not work. It means the body needs time. Another traditional herbal ally, that can be supportive for women is nettle. Nettle is often used to support mineral status and overall vitality. Many women with PCOS feel depleted, tired, and inflamed, and nettle can be a gentle daily tonic style herb that supports nourishment and resilience. Nettle can be used as a tea, as an infusion, or incorporated into blends with other supportive herbs. Number 2, support for insulin sensitivity and blood sugar regulation. Because insulin plays such a central role in PCOS, metabolic support is often one of the most helpful foundations to address. Two commonly discussed options here are cinnamon and inositol. Cinnamon is often explored for its potential role in supporting insulin sensitivity. Some women find that adding cinnamon regularly, for example to oats, yogurts, smoothies, or warm drinks, feels supportive over time. Again, this is not a cure, but it can be part of a wider blood sugar support routine. Inositol is a supplement that comes up frequently in PCOS conversations, and for good reason. Inositol is a vitamin-like compound that plays a role in insulin signaling and ovarian function. Many women with PCOS use it to support ovulation, cycle regularity, and metabolic health. It is one of the better studied supplements in the PCOS space. If someone is considering inositol, it is always worth speaking to a qualified healthcare professional, especially if they are on medication, trying to conceive, or have underlying health conditions. It can be very supportive for some, but it should still be used intentionally. So, what I want you to understand is this. If insulin resistance is present, addressing it gently can support hormones from the root. Blood sugar support is not about dieting, it is about helping the body feel stable and supported. Number 3, anti-inflammatory support. Inflammation is a huge piece of PCOS for many women. Low-grade inflammation can amplify insulin resistance and disrupt ovarian signaling. There are a few different ways to support inflammation holistically. First, through daily nourishment. Omega-3 fatty acid from oily fish or seeds, fiber-rich foods that support the gut, regular hydration, and sleep. These are not glamorous, but they are powerful. Second, through herbs that support inflammation regulation. For some women, herbal allies like ginger or turmeric are useful. These can be incorporated into food or tea. They support the body's inflammatory balance and digestion. They also support circulation and warmth, which can be helpful for women who feel sluggish or puffy. Herbal support for inflammation is often about small daily habits rather than intense protocols. A simple example might be a warm ginger tea in the morning, or turmeric added into soup or stews, or a gentle anti-inflammatory herbal blend a few times a week. Number 4, liver support and hormone clearance. The liver plays an important role in processing and clearing hormones. This does not mean you need to detox. The liver is always detoxifying, but it does mean that supporting liver function can help the body metabolize hormones more efficiently, which may be supportive for some women. Herbs traditionally used in liver support include dandelion root, milk thistle, and burdock. These are stronger herbs and are not suitable for everyone. They can interact with medications and may not be appropriate in pregnancy or certain conditions. So I always encourage women to approach liver herbs with guidance, but the concept is important. When hormone load is high and the body feels inflamed or sluggish, supporting the organs of processing and elimination can help. Non-herbal liver support also matters, so fiber, hydration, regular bowel movements, and adequate protein are foundational for hormone clearance. Number 5, nervous system regulation as hormone support. This might be one of the most important pieces and one of the most overlooked. Your hormones do not operate separately from your nervous system. Chronic stress, poor sleep, emotional load, and a sense of ongoing pressure can all affect ovulation and insulin sensitivity. When the nervous system is constantly activated, cortisol remains elevated. Cortisol can influence blood sugar regulation and can interfere with reproductive hormone signaling. This is why women often notice cycle changes during stressful seasons, even if their diet has not changed. So, nervous system support is hormonal support. This does not mean that you need to meditate for an hour a day. It means creating regular moments of safety and steadiness in your week. So, some examples might include a consistent bedtime routine, morning daylight exposure for circadian rhythm, a short walk after meals to support blood sugar and stress regulation, breath work for a few minutes before meals to shift the body into rest and digest, reducing stimulants if anxiety and cravings are high, and creating a weekly rhythm that includes actual rest, not just collapsing. Even small practices like eating slowly, chewing properly, and sitting down to eat can influence hormonal communication. If you are constantly rushing, your body receives the signal that it is not safe to relax. And over time, that affects digestion, blood sugar, and hormonal balance. And finally, number six, lifestyle rhythms that support PCOS long term. PCOS support is often framed as intense interventions, but most women do better with rhythm and consistency. A realistic PCOS supportive week might include regular meals that prioritize protein, fiber, and fat, gentle movement most days rather than exhausting workouts, sleep routines that protect circadian rhythm, herbal support in small, consistent ways, such as a daily tea blend, and a few moments each day that actively reduce stress load. Movement is worth the mention here too. Many women with PCOS are told to do intense exercise, but for some women, too much intensity increase stress hormones and worsen cravings, sleep, and inflammation. Gentle movement can be powerful. Walking, strength training in supportive ways, Pilates, yoga, dancing, anything that supports insulin sensitivity without pushing the nervous system into overdrive. The goal is to build a lifestyle that supports the body consistently, not a protocol that exhausts you. I just want to give you a gentle reminder before we move on to part 7. Everything that I've shared in this section is offered as options, not prescriptions. PCOS is complex, and what helps one woman may not help another. Many women benefit from a combination of medical care and holistic support, and there is no shame in using both. The goal is not purity, the goal is well being. If you take one thing away from this section, let it be this: PCOS support is most effective when it is steady, consistent, and built around creating the conditions for regulation. Not quick fixes, not punishment, and not extremes. Your body responds to safety, your hormones respond to stability, and small daily supports often add up more than any intense short term change. Now, finally, part 7, learning to work with your cycle again. For many women with PCOS, the menstrual cycle stops feeling like a rhythm and starts feeling like a problem to manage. When periods are irregular, unpredictable, or absent, it can be hard to trust your body. Some women feel anxious every month, waiting to see if their period will arrive. Others stop expecting it altogether. Over time, the cycle can become something that feels disappointing, frustrating, or even emotionally loaded. This is especially true in a culture that treats regular periods as a sign of success or health, and irregular periods as something that needs fixing. When your body doesn't follow that script, it's easy to internalize the idea that you are doing something wrong. But one of the most important shifts in PCOS care is learning to see the cycle not as performance measure, but as communication. Your menstrual cycle reflects what is happening internally. It responds to hormones, metabolism, stress, inflammation, energy availability, and nervous system state. So when cycles are irregular, it's rarely random. It's usually meaningful. This does not mean you need to analyze or control every symptom. It means the cycle can become a source of information rather than judgment. For women with PCOS, rebuilding a relationship with the cycle often starts by letting go of rigid expectations. A 28-day cycle is not the gold standard for everyone. Many women ovulate on longer cycles. Some women take time to regain regular ovulation after years suppressing or metabolic strain. Instead of asking, "Why don't I have a perfect cycle?" it can be more supportive to ask, "What patterns do I notice over time?" Tracking can be helpful here too, but only when it is done gently and without pressure. This might mean noticing changes in energy, mood, appetite, sleep, or cervical fluid. It might mean noticing when you feel more focused, more social, or more inward. You do not need to track everything, even small awareness can build connection. Now, over on my shop, I do have my ebook Flow, and that is very beneficial if you want to get into it and learn more about periods and the cycle and tracking. So you can access that on www.buyaleora.com or head over to our Etsy page. You can find all of our links at bio.buyaleora.com too, if that is easier for you. But yeah, check out Flow, the ebook, if you do want to learn more about cycle tracking and cycle awareness. So, learning the signs of ovulation can be empowering. Ovulation is not just something that happens or doesn't happen. It is a process that unfolds over time. Signs like changes in cervical fluid, subtle shifts in libido, or changes in energy can offer clues about where you are in your cycle, even if the cycle is irregular. For some women, ovulation does not happen every month at first. That can feel disencouraging, but it is important to remember that ovulation is an energetically demanding event. The body needs to feel safe, nourished, and supported to prioritize it. This is where patient becomes part of hormonal care. When women begin to support insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, nourish consistently, and regulate stress, the body often starts to test ovulation again. That process may not be linear. There may be months where ovulation happens and months where it does not. This does not mean progress has been lost. It means the body is recalibrating. Another important part of working with your cycle is letting go of comparison. Many women compare their cycles to friends, family members, or online narratives, but PCOS is not a failure to meet someone else's rhythm. It is a different hormonal landscape that requires different support. Your cycle is allowed to look different. It's also important to acknowledge the emotional side of this. For some women, irregular cycles are tied to grief, fertility worries, or a sense of uncertainty about the future. Those feelings are valid. Working with your cycle again is not just a physical process, it is an emotional one too. Creating space for those emotions, whether through journaling, talking, or gentle reflection, can be part of healing. When emotions are constantly suppressed, the nervous system stays activated. When they are acknowledged, the body softens. Over time, many women notice that as they support their bodies consistently, the cycle begins to feel less messy. Even before cycles fully regulate, there can be a sense of understanding and trust returning. Instead of dreading the cycle, it becomes something you check in with. Instead of feeling punished by irregularity, you start to see patterns and progress. Working with your cycle again is not about forcing it to behave. It is about building a relationship with your body that is based on listening, patience, and support. Your cycle is not failing you, it is responding to the conditions that it is given. And when those conditions begin to feel safer, more stable, and more nourishing, the cycle often responds in kind. So, as we come to the end of this episode, I want to take a moment to bring everything together because we have covered a lot today. We've talked about what PCOS actually is and what it isn't. We've explored why irregular cycles are often signals rather than any kind of failure. We've unpacked the role of insulin, blood sugar, and metabolism. We've talked about androgens, acne, hair changes, nutrition, herbal support, nervous system regulation, and learning to work with your cycle again. That is a lot of information. So if you're listening and feeling like your mind is full or like you need time to process, that is completely okay. You are not meant to absorb everything at once. This episode is not a checklist, it is a framework, something you can return to, revisit, and let settle over time. And you can always access this podcast whenever you want to come back to and to refer to. You can also access my blog, which covers all of this. Just look for season 2, episode 1, and it's written there. It is a little bit shorter than the podcast. So if you want the full in-depth talk, come back here. But you can access these at any time. But if there is one message I want you to take away from this conversation, it is that PCOS is not your body failing you. It is your body communicating. For so many women, the experience of PCOS is layered with confusion, frustration, and self blame. Irregular periods, skin changes, hair changes, energy struggles, cravings, weight changes. All of these symptoms are often treated as personal shortcomings or lifestyle issues, when in reality they are physiological responses to hormonal, metabolic, and nervous system signals. Nothing you are experiencing is random. Your body is responding to the conditions that it is in, and those conditions can be supported. That does not mean you need to do everything at once. In fact, trying to change everything at once often increases stress, which can make symptoms worse. Real support is usually built slowly through consistency rather than intensity. You do not need to overhaul your life. You do not need to follow a perfect plan. You do not need to fix yourself. Sometimes the most supportive place to start is simply understanding what is happening and letting go of blame. So, as you move forward from this episode, you might notice that you start asking different questions. Instead of what is wrong with me, you might ask, what does my body need more support with right now? Instead of why can't I get this right, ask, what feels steady and realistic for me at this stage in my life? Those shifts matter. PCOS care is not about control. It is about creating the conditions where your body feels safe enough to regulate. That safety comes from nourishment, rest, rhythm, metabolic support, emotional support, and nervous system steadiness. It comes from being on your own side rather than consistently pushing against yourself. I also want to say this: you are allowed to take this at your own pace. You're allowed to need medical support and holistic support at the same time. You are allowed to have days where you feel hopeful and days where you feel tired of managing your health. None of that means you are failing. Your body is adaptive. Your hormones are responsive, and change, when it happens, often happens gradually. So, if this episode resonated with you, I invite you to stay connected. You can read the full blog at www.byaleora.com or on Substack, where everything we've talked about today is written out in a way you can return to. You can also join the Aléora Babes on Substack or our website, where we share deeper education, ongoing support, and extended conversations. You can also listen along to Glowfully by Aléora on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Substack. And you can find all of our links in one place at bio.byaleora.com. And don't forget, if you follow along on our socials, short snippets of each of our weekly conversations will be posted there in easy, bite-sized, readable, daily posts. So, thank you for spending this time with me, and thank you for trusting this space. Season 2 is just the beginning, and you don't have to do this all alone. We are here to support your wellness. So, glow naturally and live fully. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.